All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, if you listened to yesterday's episode, you might have heard me talking a little bit about how this podcast had lost a little bit of momentum in the second quarter of this year. But now that we're halfway through the year and kind of in this tail half, I was feeling a bit more inspired to get back in a consistent routine. And I was also talking about how this whole theme in regards to being really, really inspired and really consistent at the start of the year, then kind of dropping off, the second quarter is really, really, really common for hikers with their training. And I also talked a little bit about, if there were any hikers out there who were at this stage halfway through the year, they're like, you know what, I'm keen to kind of get revamped with my training. Or maybe I've got a big goal in the second half of the year and I want to get involved and really, really build towards this, or whatever it may be. The online summit program, which is my online personal training service for hikers, could potentially be a great option. And essentially, I logged on today, and overnight, I actually had gotten a couple of emails from people just wanting to know a little bit more about the program and just learn a little bit more about what it's all about before, hopping on a call with us and, scheduling something in the calendar and having a chat about it all. So I thought, you know what, you don't have to bend my arm too much. I love talking about this. So this is as good a reason as any to talk about the program a little bit more. So ultimately, I decided, the next 3 episodes of this podcast, I'm going to be spending a little bit of time just talking through some of the details of this program, some of the details of, the online summit program, just so people who may be interested in learning a little bit more can, get a bit more context. Now, if you have no interest at all in learning about this training, you have no intention in the future of ever joining up, if you're like, you know what, I don't really care at all, in all honesty, you could probably skip the next 3 episodes because we're just going to be talking about the program. But if you are a bit curious about how we go about things, or maybe you've been considering things for a little while, or maybe you're like tossing up your options at the moment around, okay, I do want to get back into training, but which direction do I want to go? This might be interesting. So the next 3 episodes, we're purely going to be talking about the program. Now, in today's episode, we're going to be covering, as I sort of said yesterday, the program itself, the online summit program, it was originally created many years ago, and it's really centered around 3 big pillars, which is training, education, and support. And they're going to be the next 3 episodes, which we're going to be breaking down. So ultimately today, we're begin talking about pillar number 1, which is personalized and specialized training. So if you're listening to this podcast, the Training for Trekking podcast, you probably already know, or at least have an inkling about how valuable proper training for a hiker can be, both on and off the trail. And essentially the idea behind the program is instead of you having to figure things out for yourself and listen to 300 episodes and still not 100% know how to apply things, we take our specialist knowledge and systems, which we developed over years and years and years of coaching hikers and everyone under the sun, and apply it into your specific situation. So you can take our knowledge, our systems, our sort of expertise, and make sure everything you're doing with your training is honed in towards you, your goals, and your situation. So ultimately, how does this work and what does this look like? Well, the first step is making sure everything is personalized to you. So the way that we go about this is, number 1, we always have a thorough conversation with someone before we join up. We do not sign anyone up on our programs without actually having a chance to chat with them and learn about your situation, learn about where you're at and what you need and what you're looking for. Because, I find people who just sort of sign up online without actually having a conversation, sometimes things can be a bit miscommunicated or missed or whatever it may be. So number 1, we always make sure we have a conversation. Now, if people do decide after that conversation and after we decide, hey, we're actually pretty confident we can help you, and the person decides, hey, I wouldn't mind coming on board, the next steps from there to make sure everything is personalized, really, really straightforward. First of all, we get all our clients to fill out a pretty thorough questionnaire, which sort of goes through a whole bunch of just sort of little details around getting all the knowledge, all the information we need to work around you. So it'll ask you questions about, well, number 1, what are you training for? What type of a hike have you got coming up, or hikes are you wanting to do? What type of pack weight do you need to carry? All those like little numbery things which we need to figure out. But it'll get a bit more personal and asking things about, okay, how often the week would you like to train and how much time do you want to commit to those sessions? Would you prefer to train at home, outdoors, or in a gym? How often do you want to hike in your training? Is there anything you love and hate doing? And a whole bunch of other things that just really help us tailor it all around you and your life. Now, the second step that we do to personalize everything for you is we get you to go through what we call a ready to trek assessment. which is a really simple assessment which you just do at home, but just allows us to identify any particular restrictions, weaknesses, or blind spots which may affect both you or your training. So we get to go through a series of different assessments at home, just in, your living room, whatever it may be. You send over the results. And from there, we can actually say, you know what, actually, this area is looking pretty good. This area may need a little bit extra work, or maybe this area actually is really, really lagging behind things. And we find this is really, really, really useful because a lot of hikers come to us and they say to give us things like, hey, I've got knee pain and I'm just not sure what I'm supposed to be doing to get on top of it. And, if someone says that to me, I could think, okay, there could be 20 different reasons why you're getting knee pain. We could just work on 20 different things and it'll probably improve. But if we can actually identify the priorities, that may make things a little bit smoother. Same thing if people are going to struggle going up and down hills. If we can identify certain muscles that may be lagging a little bit, then we can really hone things in. So the assessment's really, really, really valuable. Now, essentially, once we get those two things, and we get the intake questionnaire, and we get the assessments themselves, and then the coach, whether it's myself or one of our other coaches, we can sit down and get started on, the first draft of their program. And we'll sort of take a couple of days to put things together. And ultimately, our programs will be a mixture of 4 different things, which will kind of build out your week and build out your training to make sure we're kind of covering all the different bases we need to get you in the best spot possible. And ultimately, those 4 things tend to be a mix of strength training, hiking specific conditioning, hiking programming, and recovery and mobility work. And this is kind of how we make sure we're covering all our different bases. Now, on the strength training, you probably heard me harp on about this all the time on this podcast, but just in a nutshell, why it is so important, we really look at the strength training around 2 main outcomes. Number 1 is just making sure all the supporting muscles of the joints, so the feet, the ankles, the knees, the hips, the back, and all of that they are going to be strong and stable enough to withstand any forces you do encounter on the trail. So when you do have an extended downhill section, or if you do step in a pothole, or if you do have a slip, stumble, or fall, or whatever it is, but your body's in a better chance of withstanding those forces and not having that turn into pain or potentially anything worse. Now, on the other side of things, the strength training is really used just to try to improve your performance on the trail. So your legs and your upper body are in a position where you can kind of go and go, as long as you need, whether it's uphill, downhill, whether you end up carrying a couple extra kilos or pounds on your back one day or whatever it is, but making sure just the muscles themselves, they're not so much going to be the limiting factor. Now, on top of that, we tend to build out our strength sessions out with a bit of balance work as well, because that's usually pretty important. There's also quite a bit of core development, just to make sure we are sort of ticking off all our different boxes and really attacking things from every angle. So it's not like you're just being treated like a bodybuilder where you go in a gym and do 20 different chest exercises, but we're being really, really, really specific around the needs of a hiker and your individual needs. Now, the second aspect of training, which I mentioned before, that hiking-specific conditioning. This essentially involves you doing sort of shorter cardio sessions, which you may do at home, around the local neighborhood, or in a gym if you have access to that. But they're really, really targeted particular aspects of hiking fitness. So, for example, if you come to us and say, actually, I do struggle when I go up hills, I get quite huffed and puffed, and I really struggle with my breathing. What we can do is we can take particular workouts and particular protocols that can hone in that area, really, really making sure we're doing the right things for that, and see a change, relatively quickly. Or alternatively, you might be like, I need to get ready for a heavy pack, or maybe I want to improve my hiking speed because I'm a little bit of a slower hiker, or whatever it is. But we can really, really dial in our cardio sessions to make sure not only you're just generally improving your fitness, but we're also working on these specific areas as well. Now, the hiking programming is essentially looking at, this is the third part of the training. This is essentially looking at, how much hiking, realistically you may want to do as part of this training, and just giving you a bit of structure and direction around that. Now, when I say realistically, some people might say, I've got all the time in the world. I can hike every single week and dedicate a lot of amount of hours to it. Some people might be like, I can only hike every couple of weeks or every 3 weeks. Or some people might be like, actually, where I'm at in the world right now, or where the weather is, or my time commitments, I can't do any hiking at all. And that's not ideal, but we'll work around it. But whatever you tell us is realistic, then we'll structure our training around that, just to ensure and give you recommendations for your hiking that, number 1, won't put you at risk of doing too much too soon and flaring up some type of overuse injury, but also number 2, doing, making sure we are progressively moving you forward. And then essentially the final little part of the program is that recovery and mobility work. And this is something that a lot of people tend to miss, but it can be really, really valuable in the sense of just doing some small things during your week, just to kind of keep the body recovering well in between sessions and sort of help manage and preempt any aches or pains, that may creep up. So ultimately, those four things come together, the strength training, the hiking specific conditioning, the hiking programming, and the recovery mobility, and they kind of come and turn into, greater than the sum of their parts. In the sense, if you did any one of those by themselves, they could be beneficial, but when we can apply them all together as a cohesive program, it's just amazing how good this type of stuff can be. Now, essentially, when it comes down to any training, we never want to be just doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So the intention of our program as we work together, every few weeks we'll progress things. We'll make things a little bit harder. We'll make things a little bit more difficult and give it a bump up, give it a bump up, give it a bump up to ensure that you're continually progressing and continually moving forward. Now, the way that we deliver all this training is we don't do live sessions. It's not like you're sitting on a Zoom call, like dancing around in your living room. It's not like you're just following an Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper with, some scribbly exercises that, you might get from a physio or something like that. Essentially, the way that we go about it is we've got a dedicated training app where we'll essentially load in all your workouts, all your exercises. So you'll basically open it up and you'll be like, you know what, today I want to do a strength session. So you'll open up the strength session. It'll tell you exactly what we need to do. It'll give you all the warm-ups, all your exercises. It'll give you clear descriptions about everything we want to do. And everything on top of that does have a video in tutorial. So if there's any exercise you're like, oh, I've never done that before, or I'm curious how to do that, you just click on the exercise, there'll be a little video, and you just follow along like that. For the cardio sessions, same thing. You'll just open it up, follow the instructions, and away you go. It's really, really, really straightforward, and it's a super simple way just to deliver the program to people anywhere around the world. So ultimately, that's sort of how the training is delivered initially. Now, on top of that, the training itself, it is a very fluid and adaptable process. So we will give you certain recommendations, we will give you certain programming, but things will always come up. Sometimes things will be too easy, too difficult. Maybe you'll go away, maybe you'll get sick, maybe the weather will change or whatever it may be. And during those times, we just make sure we just adapt and stay flexible around that. And that's where your coaching support comes in. You just chat with your coach and we work around that. And I'll go into in a future episode around how that all looks. But ultimately, that's kind of how the training side of things looks. We take all the specialist knowledge that we have, apply it into your personal situation, and over time, we progress, and ultimately get you just feeling absolutely amazing for your hiking. So ultimately, that is pillar number one, our personalized training, which comes into the online summit program. As you can probably tell, listening to my voice, I love talking about this. So I've been developing this for years and years and years, and it is, I've just seen so many awesome success stories through it, and I'm just so passionate about it, I should say. So I've enjoyed having a bit of a chat about this. This is episode 1 of 3 where we're going to be talking about the program. The next one, we're going to go into the second pillar, which is education. But essentially, if you were interested in learning a little bit more about this program, you're like, you know what, the training sounds pretty good to me. Actually, I wouldn't mind finding out a bit more about this and see if it may be right for me and if it can fit around my life and what I kind of need. The simplest next step is, as I said, we do need to have a conversation with everyone before we actually get into things, just to make sure we learn a bit about your situation, really we're all on the same page, and just talk through a potential package which may fit into your life and may potentially be able to help you. So if you were interested in exploring a little bit more, all you need to do is go to summitstrength.com.au/apply. That's summitstrength.com.au/apply. And essentially on there, you can book a call straight into our calendar, have a bit of a quick chat with our team, and just ultimately we can just sort of see if and how our training may be right for you. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. I hope getting some insights and some clarity around this is interesting to a few people. And as I said, this is episode number 1 of 3 when we're talking about the program. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you very, very soon.